had to kind of just address the night and day differences by essentially just making it to where it's like, okay, like we need to get rid of the clutter. We need to redo the airstrikes. So right now, we're trying to figure out what the airstrikes are going to look like in terms of, like, we're taking some reference to World in Conflict, simplistic, straightforward, category-based airstrikes. So then that way, when we push the idea of adding more airstrike types, it's very easy to know these are support options when they don't cause any damage to units. These are surgical strike ones, kind of where it's like it's directional, very small in an area. And then we have like it's more of like a area of effect, larger radius ones, where you specify a zone, and you're gonna have collateral damage when you call in those type of airstrikes. Kind of like the gas attacks, kind of like the Thunderbolt run, where it's like it's a wide dispersion. Um, we want to look into adding more airstrikes, so that's kind of the idea behind adding, like those categories. Is we can add feature categories. We can add more onto the stack because with the old system, it was more similar to Company of Heroes 1 and 2 and 3, where it was like that little like ticker that kind of came along the side. But then as the game got away from being not as Company Hero centric on the airstrikes and more freeform, more like long-term games, we needed to kind of come up with a different idea of how to present like the sheer amount of options that you're going to have during the course of a gameplay session, like the rewiring tool, like the clearing tool, like that kind of stuff. And I would encourage everyone on YouTube, on Discord, please take the time to look at the HUD. Go on Discord as a guest. You know, if you don't like Discord, make a Steam thread. Once you've actually seen it, the pictures either on Discord or on our roadmap website, which you can navigate through to by going to our main website and then going to the roadmap page, or just opening the game, going to the main menu, clicking on the roadmap picture, go to the 1.3 category, and it's the first thing there. Because we're looking to have a rapid mobilization to get that 1.3 like out of here, completed, done. Like it's gonna be a quick push. Like right after we finish this AMA, an update's coming out, and that update's gonna add dozens of fixes to automation, to and other things that Duravar will bring up that we're going to hit upon later basically in this weekly dev update. Uh, so I've kind of held the last 2 or 3 days of updates so we can just kind of release one huge bundle, sit on it for like push it out to experimental tonight, and then if everything's good, push it out to everyone by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on how everything goes. And then regardless, come Monday, we're doing bug fixes and tweaks if there are anything that major that comes up, but we're tearing out the HUD. Like first thing, first come. Um, on the HUD, let's see. We're going with a more transparent look for the minimap, a rotate, a zoom in feature. We're going to be looking at making the minimap actually useful because of the density, the size of the map. It's really hard to get meaningful information from the minimap because in a traditional RTS, because the world is so small, at a glance, you can know information immediately. But like when you get a ping in our game, it's like, is it on the corner? Is it on top of that building? Is it where? What do I do? Like you don't like because of how big the world is. It's just you don't know if it's on that city block or the beginning of that city block because you
I think
can't
that's
really
something I
tell.
have trouble with.
Yeah, and I have trouble with it as the game director and the lead
Yeah,
programmer.
it's
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 atrocious.
like, hang on, where's this, where's that, sort of thing.
Yeah. So the biggest thing in my mind as part of this push is that every couple of days we're gonna be ripping out a section of the HUD and putting in a new one, and then putting in the new stuff. So we're gonna start with the bottom left and redo the mini map. So like sometime in the next 2 or 3 days, business days of like Tuesday, Wednesday, you'll get it on experimental the new mini map, and you'll get like the new little way of doing the doctrines and DNA research tree when that comes online. Um, and then our prototype Zoom mechanic, because we're going to be playing around with the idea that it's going to kind of like dynamically zoom and keep you like a localized like area, and then like basically we're going to be playing with zooming and just the dynamism of like it tries to like kind of give you the like kind of give you the most information you can in a snapshot, and then if you don't like it, you can turn it off, you can zoom out, you can click on the map, you can move around, and it's more like a map and like a Skyrim almost, where like if you want to keep track of an area, you can zoom in, you can go over there and roll the mouse in, and it will zoom in different areas of the mini map. So if you want to keep an eye on a certain province or whatever, um, and then we're gonna be taking feedback. We're gonna put it out because the goal is that we're gonna each one of those cards on our roadmap is like the UI we expect to take a week at least, and it might take a little bit longer based on like we're gonna roll out that bottom left section, then it's gonna go on experimental, and it's gonna be like feedback. What do you like? What don't you like? Rapid fire. Okay, cool. Everyone likes it. We're moving on to the top left. We're gonna rip out the ROE. We're gonna rip out the airstrikes. The way that's done, because there's like a little like pinpoint ammo like targeting thing up there. That's going bye bye. That was like an old version of the airstrike thing, and the prototype that's not going to be there in the final version. We're most likely going to like take those three icons and convert them into something more minimized as well. So it's not just three up there. It's like one, and then it comes down to tabs. So there's not as much visual clutter on the top left, because you're not having to make dire like per minute decisions on those options on the top left. So we want to dock it or like make one global icon that you click on, and then it comes up with diplomacy, and it comes up with ROE, and then it comes up with like the zone information. Because that's like informational cues that you don't need on your HUD all the time. You want to see the game, and you want to be immersed in what you're doing, and not just you know like icon hell. You know, in terms of like, we're gonna keep the engineer stuff there regardless, because the idle engineer tool is useful. Um, and that's basically a gist of what we're doing on the top left. That will be towards the end part of this coming week. So if everything works out, the first 2 to 3 days will be mini-map. The next 2 or 3 days, maybe even just one day, will be the top left. And then we'll jump over to the top right. We'll do the airstrike. The top right and the airstrike likely next week. And then we'll do the bottom right, which is the most complicated, a week in its own, potentially. It just kind of depends on how much feedback there is and criticism, and then we just be a little fluid. So it could take 2 weeks, it could take 1 week. But we're going to be trying to move as quickly as possible for the UI. And then there's the main menu. So once we do the HUD, we'll rip that out, and then we'll do the main menu based off of not making it look as bloated and as ugly, making it a little more akin to like a modern Battlefield type main menu, a little more cleaner navigation, integrating the roadmap a little more seamlessly into the homepage, integrating these live streams on there so you can watch it from the main menu or it'll open up in your Steam browser. That's going to be a big push for us is when you click on a link on the main menu or a tutorial link or whatever, it'll open in your Steam browser now instead of opening up your web browser, and then the game minimizes and it's just a janky user experience. It's bad. If you want to copy and paste the URL over from the Steam browser, totally do it. But at the very least, everything needs to be integrated and more seamless to kind of make it more professional in terms of the presentation. The top right is actually not going to change that much. The top right was something we just made the excuse to rip out and do immediately on the moment we had a chance for like the time, the day, the infection level, the money, the DNA points, the population, the pause, and the play. That's already final. We did that a while ago. The moment we kind of had that, because we knew like that was like really, really important to get that situated. I'm trying to think, and then I'm gonna briefly go over this. Is that like for the main menu, we're going to be doing the highlights where we just kind of pick some YouTubers that play the game and kind of put them on the main menu to kind of show and highlight different people in the community that play the game differently, you know, kind of fun personalities, just to kind of, you know, show some different ways of playing the game. So Nerdy Old Gamer is one of the ones we show. We've shown Remy in the past. anyone else that plays the game, we're just gonna kind of go back and pick random ones and set up a rotation where it kind of just rotates, so it's not always the same people. Just keep in mind, so you'll see that under like something like the highlights, kind of like what Battlefield does to kind of like show people in the community and how they're playing. So it gives other people cool, interesting ideas. Part of the push for the UI modernization is going to be adding in presets for pandemic mode. So depending on just how many custom community options there are, we'll be picking some of them from the poll. There was a user poll that someone put up. Oh, I always forget his name. I'm so sorry. But I have to go back and I hunt that down announcements. And that poll was basically community voted custom game options that people wanted to see. Making everyone walk, setting health, turning off other infected types. You know, basically being able to customize the game more to your whims. And then having the ability to save those presets and load them. So if I make a preset where it's like everyone walks, you know, kind of deal, like the like old Resident Evil games, or better yet, everyone runs and they're not allowed to walk anymore, or maybe you turn up their speed, you know, you could do those kind of things as mutilators to kind of give yourself interesting insanity runs almost, where it's like, oh, this is like a recreation of 28 days later, so I tweaked the standard infected in this way, I gave them this health, I made them this fast, they respawn this quickly. I turned off all the special infected. It's just standard infected. Insanity run. And you die in one hit. Like that kind of stuff. Where it's like, cool. So that's what we kind of want to do, what we're going to do as far as the UI change, is giving people the option to kind of make the game more of their own if they don't agree with our balance changes. Weapon balance changes will be more down the line when we get to releasing an SDK. Because like we don't want to do that crazy just yet. We want to leave that to modders so they can just change out everything to their whim for that kind of stuff. We're gonna keep like basic configurations of health, speed, that kind of stuff for like all the enemies and when they spawn and how they spawn. We'll expose those to any files, so that way you can share any files with your friends. We're still on the fence if we're gonna integrate that with the workshop, so that way you can share them via mods on the workshop, or if we're just going to keep it where it's going to be just, you send it to people on Discord, and we just make a channel, like a forums thread, and people can monitor and make their own threads of like, oh, this is my thing. Because we're still pending a transition over to mod.io, so that way when we release the game on more store platforms, modding is available to everyone, and it's not just, well, you're screwed if you're not on Steam. So that's a consideration of why we're just kind of trying to figure out when the best time is to make that transition from the Steam Workshop to mod.io, which uses your Steam account for authentication to log in, so you don't have to make an account. It just works. And like Insurgency uses it as an example, as another game. But that's something that we're kind of mulling on because that would add more time to 1.3, so we'll figure that out. We're kind of trying to procrastinate on that until we get closer to 1.4 and 1.5, so that way we can just do the modding, do the ecosystem correctly, and just focus on that, and get some modders on board, get their feedback before we release it out to the public. For the UI, I don't think there's anything else relevant besides just we're going to have a news page where you can track the latest updates on Steam, development updates, last letters from the producer. The operator screen is going to be coming back. We turned it off because we didn't have the time and the resources to basically do it correctly. We were just kind of all over the place. I mean, by any means, there are two programmers on the team, and most of the time it's one and a half. Because I'm doing generalist stuff and balancing and fixing bugs and doing research and looking into what's coming down the pipe and managing the business sometimes. So realistically, it's sometimes one program and a half. So in our mind, it was like, okay, when we get to 1.3, we're going to need to just put the operator screen up properly. And like, there's an example of that in the roadmap website where it demonstrates, like, it'll keep track of your operators, like how you play as them. And the idea is there'll be 3 males and 3 females. Then you can basically you choose an appearance, and then you customize them based off of that appearance. You name them, and then you choose abilities from the classes to basically like make them a hybrid medic, sniper or whatever. So those are all things that are coming down the pipe. I don't think I'm missing anything for the UI. Um, oh, a leaderboard for Horde. That might be put off a little bit longer because I have to figure out a way of making that work for Steam and the Epic Games Store and Microsoft and GOG in the future. So we might put that off a little bit longer until we can find a solution that works for all three. So that way you can compare your stats against everyone across the world on all platforms instead of just that's just the Steam ecosystem, and then that's the Epic Game ecosystem, and it's just lopsided at that point in terms of leaderboards for Horde mode. I think I've summed everything up for the UI, unless you think I missed something, Duravar.
I don't think you're missing anything. No, I think you've covered just about all of it.
Excellent. So I guess I'll move on to the next bullet point.
Yep. So on to the next one is infected teleport glitch.
So,
Now, this one sounds interesting because I haven't actually seen that.
yeah. So there's been we've kind of chalked it up. We thought it was user error. We thought it was people not knowing how to play the game and not knowing how to secure their zones. And then someone made a thread on our Discord that was like, hey, here it is. It happens every single time. Load up this save file, and random infected will sometimes appear in your back lines, even though I have walls, even though I have a security team holding a bridge. Well, we were finally able to track down that bug, and we think we've eliminated it to where you won't get random pockets of infection that incorrectly devirtualize behind your lines or incorrectly devirtualize on the opposite side of a perimeter fence. And it's a bug. It was basically a bug. It was a really hard bug for us to track down for the most part. Um, and we got the save files on Discord. I think we started a thread. So one guy started a thread, and a bunch of other people jumped in, and they were throwing their save files in. And between all of those save files, there was so much information that we were finally able to hunt it down and kill that bug. At least we think we've killed it. We'll leave it in the eyes of the community to basically playtest the build that's going up after this and verify that. As far as I know, we haven't been able to recreate it. I haven't been able to recreate it. But people play differently than we do. So there might be a situation that sometimes it does still happen, but I don't think so. But we'll play it by card and see how it goes over the weekend. That's another reason why we're releasing the build on experimental first this weekend, or the next hour. And then if everything's good, there's no major issues, everybody else will get it, and they'll get the automation and all the other dozens, if not hundreds of fixes and enhancements we've done in 1.2. But anyhow, back to you, Terramar.
Yep. Just keeping on that sort of point a little bit here. So when it comes to the sort of bug that you're talking about, right? What would actually go into incorporating and fixing that? Like once you locate it and once you pin it down and are able to recreate it, sort of thing, right? What would actually have to go in incorporating a fix to that?
It was basically a desynchronization in terms of how do I explain this in the simplest way? So we have virtual armies, and those virtual armies move people like an icon representing 10, 20, 40, 60, 80 people. And for whatever reason, there was a desynchronization where sometimes the virtual unit mover would essentially like move too slow or move too fast and then get stuck on something. And when it got stuck on something, for some whatever reason another component that it was reliant on would sometimes jump ahead, and then it would almost slingshot where it'd be like, oh, that other actor is really far ahead that's telling me where I need to go. I'm going to spawn, because I'm stuck and I haven't moved in a while. So it was happening sometimes because they got stuck on obstacles, and then the mover or the objective circle that was trying to keep everyone together got so far ahead that it was like, oh my god, what are you doing back there? And then it would teleport them to the point in behind your base. And then other times it was basically the same thing when they would teleport on the other side of your walls. So because again, there wasn't enough safeties in place, or when the update loop was too slow, because we were trying to basically keep performance better. Because we've noticed that our timers and our managers can be very expensive if we run them too fast for update calls. Like, check to see, are you moving? What are you doing? How are things going in the world? What's going on? So we've had to like tone those down and give ranges of time. Some of those ranges needed to be adjusted and fine-tuned, and the others just needed to basically have more safeties in place. Of like, if you're stuck, please don't teleport. Like, go back, backtrack a couple feet, 10, 20, 30 feet, try the navigation, move another way. You know, um, something along those lines. Basically different ways mathematically to figure out a safe way of removing them from that chair or that obstruction that stuck the general, the virtual unit mover, to where it's going to cause an issue later on. Anyhow,
Fair
yeah.
enough.
What's the
Okay.
next question?
Yep. So the next one is engineer repair teleworking bug with motor pool.
Oh yeah. So we have gotten some reports. This is bug week, just for people to know. We got a lot of bugs in terms of basically what we fixed this week, and one of them was the motor pool and building. Is that there was a bug where sometimes if you finish constructing a motor pool, or even some of the other structures, the engineer would incorrectly assume that he was stuck when the construction was over, and it would teleport him through the floor, thus killing him. We were able to find that bug. We were able to reproduce it based off of Discord threads, and that bug should be resolved as well in the next update. We're building motor pools or building very large structures should no longer push your engineers out of the map, push them on top of structures, and kill them. Um, so people that are on those threads, people that basically have been, like reporting those things, do try and break it again if you can. Because again, we're trying to hunt all those down over the weekend going into Monday so we can start on the UI and have a fresh start going into 1.3. But yeah, that one's pretty
We all
straightforward though.
love breaking things.
Oh God, help me.
It's one of our favorite pastimes, breaking things.
Yeah.
All right. So next on the docket is the new automation system is fully in. Now, this is something I've been rather excited to cover because you and I talked about the automation system. What is it? Last week we talked about it. Maybe a week.
Pretty
before?
frequently.
Yeah, pretty frequently we talk about the automation system. So this is something I am pretty keen about. So yes, so if you could go into that, that'd be great.
I think putting in the automation system was great because you figure we've been behind on the roadmap for so goddamn long that to finally get in there and put in one of the biggest things that people have been so excited about in terms of like actually being able to engage the civilians and not having to micromanage every aspect of their operation or how they exist in the world. That was a big thing for me going into this month, going into just leaving 1.2. And I mean, from what the feedback that I've heard, as far as I know, I haven't read a single person that dislikes it, that hates the system. It seems like everyone likes it. It seems like it's a positive addition to the game. I think it helps out a lot in terms of the life and the replayability and just giving players more options to kind of play the game in the mid to late, because it's not really too viable in early game where you're still cementing yourself, you're building your base, you're trying to figure out where Chelsea is, you're trying to figure out, where you stand in relation to her, because maybe you built too close to her, you need to get out and retreat a couple of grids to buy yourself time to expand, make money, and entrench your position. And you know, over last week, you know, we saw like putting in the uninfected confirmed, the infected confirmed and unknown, and basically just setting up all those rules and automation, and being able to just you go into a zone, you build that structure, and now there are actual consequences to your actions in terms of like if you're being a dick, they'll start to riot. If they riot, they'll form a dynamic civilian group, and then that dynamic civilian group will fight you to their death. And they will never ally with you, and they will not never negotiate with you. So it kind of gives repercussions for just ignoring the civilians, for just being more focused on the end goal. The end justify the means. Just screw the civilians. They're in my way. Get out of my way. I'm gonna go all in for the infection. There are repercussions to your actions. People are gonna hate you in the mid to late game, and that's how it would be in the real world. So then you're at that point, you're like, I don't care. I'm going to kill everyone. You can play the game that way. It'll be harder. There's going to be a lot more bullets you're going to have to spend going from block to block, zone to zone. But that's the beauty of the game is we give people all these little tools, all these little ways of playing, and then it's up to you to tell your own story in terms of like, oh, I'm gonna ride the line in the center. I'm gonna be the good guy. I'm gonna be the bad guy. And to me, the automation was part of that in terms of like giving players the way of being a good guy, giving players a way of getting back into good graces, and just globally in terms of how the civilians perceive you of like, oh, he's actually trying to help us. Um, and the interesting part is just seeing the long-term implications of when we added in automation, we also pushed in systems like, oh, if a zone enters yellow or red contagion for too long, they're going to riot, and they're also going to form a dynamic civilian group because they're going to be like, wait, like, why are you allowing the infection to spread in our zones? This is where we live. Like, why are you here? Kind of deal. And we went through a route of having it to where building those civilian administration zones in a province allows you to monitor the happiness in that zone. So when you go into a zone, you build one of those, you can see if they hate you, if they like you, and then based off of that, it would give you an idea of like, oh, I should stay away from that zone. Oh, I should evacuate people from that zone to this zone where I have evacuation centers running, where I can start to increase the happiness in that zone, but eventually increase the happiness in the other zone when they hate me, because information travels in our game. Where if you start to do good deeds, eventually everyone will hear about it. Unless you blew all the bridges, or you walled off all the sections, and information won't travel. So there's a pro and a con to being like too closely knit in terms of like how you set up your bases and everything else. Um, so yeah, and so that's that in a nutshell. Really glad that got in the way it got in. I feel like there still could be some ratcheting up and tweaking of just generally how we convey the automation rules, and just kind of maybe adding a guard tower extension to the civilian hold in the future, where if you want to like specify like preset like insertion points, preset like points where like they go to instead of the civilian hold, you can for security reasons. I'm gonna kind of wait to see like how the game kind of evolves, what kind of feedback I get, and then just kind of be responsive based off of like, is there a need for this, or is it just extra or something, and no one's gonna actually use it besides me and once in a blue moon. So I'm kind of waiting to see how things go before I make that decision, what kind of feedback I hear. I don't know, am I missing anything, Derivar, from the discussions? Anything you want to add?
Nothing that I really particularly want to add, besides the fact that this system makes the game more interesting.
I completely agree.
It makes it so much more interesting because there's so much more complexity to it. It makes caring for civilians actually worth it, sort of thing, because it's like you either fuck around and find out, or you rescue them. You know?
Yeah, and the interesting part is when we get to 1.4, you know, Pierce is going to be an extension of the civilians. So, like, kind of like the book that we just released on the Steam store on Amazon over the week. But basically, kind of covers the police doctrine. It covers their backstory, and it covers like who they are. And essentially, like, it's gonna be very interesting to see kind of how all that kind of melds and plays together, in terms of like your actions are gonna have consequences. In terms of Pierce loves the people. His job is just to protect them. He's been denied getting them off the island unless it's through your means and your means only. But if you're being a dick to them, now you're gonna have an armed group that's more powerful than the dynamic civilian groups that's gonna actually be able to give you a punch to the face in the mid to late turn if you're being a dick. Because the dynamic civilian groups are kind of a nuisance. They slow you down, but for the most part, you can wreck them pretty quickly. Um, Sometimes they can get pretty big if they're allowed to build a stronghold and kind of like cement themselves over provinces. But it kind of just depends on just how your game goes. And that's something we're going to look at long term and tweak and adjust to kind of get the most out of those systems as well. So, like, everything is just kind of firing on all calibers. Because, like, most of these games are, like, what I've seen historically are, like, 3 hour, 5 hour games minimum. And then realistically, some of them go as, like, 5 to 7 hours. So I'm trying to see, like, okay, like, how does the balance adjust here and there? And how can we basically tweak things and just kind of, like, make it to an optimal for everyone? It's not just the people that know how to beat the game in 30 minutes, know how to beat the game in 40 minutes because they exploit. And I don't want to nerf the game or make the game unfun because those people are just really, really good at the game. I mean, even that happens with Subnautica. So it's like, okay, it's just kind of finding that middle ground of just making it to where it's fun for everyone and still a challenge, which is going to be
And
one
I
of the
think
things we're doing. Yeah?
I guess that middle ground is definitely the hardest thing to really go for because where can you find a comfortable middle ground? That's the big thing.
Data analytics and basically just I go off of data analytics and I go off of basically how many people are saying one thing on multiple locations. And then, and then at the same time, I just look at my own personal stance of like, does it fall within the core of what the game design doc says? Does it fall into the core of what they want the game to be? What else is this going to affect? Changing something. Because changing one thing affects everything else eventually. In terms of basically like our game has gotten very complicated very quickly. When we first released on early access 3 years ago, you had 8 people. You started in a grid. It was like Star Trek, where you had away teams and defense teams. Defense teams had a max of 12 people. There were no vehicles. Defense teams couldn't leave your starting province. Away teams were the only team that could leave your starting province. And it was like a weird pseudo XCOM RTS, basically. And we kind of like strayed away from that based off of feedback, based off of just increasing the scope, adding more infected, giving more autonomy in how people play, giving them more ways of like they want to deal with civilians, they want to interact with civilians. So it was like it's been a huge evolution. And as the game has expanded beyond the scope of what I initially envisioned, it's kind of being like fluid in terms of like, oh, this will work and that won't work, and maybe we have to put these things off a little bit longer until I've been able to see how these systems are going to play. So it's a constant. It's a constant struggle, back and forth. Yeah.
Believe it.
Okay, so what else do we have on the agenda?
Hang on, as soon as I can open. Damn it. Okay. So next on the docket is bugs and performance tweaks.
Yeah, I mean, this week we also put in a lot of fixes for people that were contacting us on Discord, and they were like, "This is not my performance is being nuked here. These things are happening." So we went in there, we retroactively changed a lot of things. We put more safeguards in place, where sometimes with like a combination of systems, sometimes like things would balloon to cause too much of a cost in game to where like you get like these weird FPS spikes. We believe we've brought those under control. We believe that we've been able to stabilize the game and keep it within that acceptable frame rate of 60 frames per second, 80 frames per second at all times. I mean, obviously sometimes lower, of like 30 to 40 if you're on a low spec computer. You sometimes can get higher if you really, really tweak those settings. Um, but yeah, we've been persistent in terms of benchmarking on our potato, on minimum spec, and just making sure that everyone's able to enjoy the game. And then we actually redid the entire video options. So one thing you're going to notice when the game leaves experimental by like this weekend, the Monday, is that most people are going to have to retweak the video options because we improved them, we centralized them, we got rid of the same file bloat. I don't know if anyone's ever gone to the same file folder for Cepheus Protocol, but we were having different save files with different graphics options and gamma settings and all this. We centralized it into an INI file. We modernized it, one might say, so it's easier to just kind of tweak it everything centralized in one location, the game user settings file, game user settings ini file. So you'll notice that if you haven't already played the experimental, you might want to go back and retweak it. Otherwise, when the new update comes out on normal, please check your video options, tweak it to your heart's content, play with it. Um, and we also did add like some more dynamic ramping up and down to the ambient civilians because there was like a bug where like sometimes if you tweak the ambient civilians live in the game, because some people were turning ambient civilians up all the way to max and they were on a gaming laptop. Well, ambient civilians are incredibly expensive on your CPU. So we had to basically get a little bit more aggressive in terms of that we lowered the default amount of ambient civilians that spawn in. I mean, if you have a really good processor, above 10th generation, a desktop computer, not a laptop, because laptop CPUs and desktop CPUs are not born equal. The laptop CPUs will always be weaker than their desktop equivalent. So watt consumption power. So the idea is that we were able to basically make it more configurable. So if you have a really good computer, you can turn it up all the way. You can see more civilians on the city. And we added more bug fixes and tweaks this week to make it to where like you can change it live in the game, kind of like Grand Theft Auto, and then it'll take a couple of seconds, and then it will start to populate the city better. Or if you're noticing that it's not worth it, turn it down, and it will start removing them dynamically now a little more efficiently, to where you can really quickly benchmark what are you comfortable with, what level of you know dense population density do you want in the city when you're playing, and that kind of fed into basically like we also increased the max amount of civilians that can evacuate, go through automation. And this last update that's coming out, well, not last update, but the update that's coming out today, is that we increased that number from 30 to 40. So now you can get even more people, which is roughly more than that because you figure it's 10 people in every group. So there's roughly like I think like 80 or sorry, like 100 more people you can evacuate, automate, basically move around essentially when it comes to that system. Um, yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. This is bug fix week, bug fix and optimization week, and next week is UI week. That's all I got for that, Durvar.
Okey-dokey. So next on the docket is preparing for the new UI, getting feedback in announcements.
I kind of already mentioned that. Again, it's just please, 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 please take a look at the roadmap, take a look at the announcements, leave your feedback on Steam, on Reddit. We're looking everywhere. So then that way we can see what people are saying, because people don't like. Some people will probably just hold their opinion until they get to play it next week, and then we can move from there. Because again, I want to get the co-op. I want to get the co-op. I want to have something out playable by October. So that comes down to just people giving us our opinion, their opinion or ours to God opinion. Don't sugarcoat it. It's bad, it's bad. And then tell us how we can improve. Don't just tell it's bad. Tell us what's better. How can we make it better? These games over here have done it better than you're doing it. Go look at them. Show a picture. Show a video. We're not going to get butthurt. We're going to be like, oh, here's a point. Or, oh, we don't agree completely, but we're going to take it with a grain of salt. See how other people echo that. And then go from there. So that's the biggest thing about criticism. Just don't be a dick. But you can be honest in terms of like, this is crap, this is bad, please look at these games. Boom. And obviously be a dick by like cursing, calling people out directly, whatever.
Yeah.
Other than that though,
Looks like shit.
I hate you, Michael. So, um, that's it for the UI. Why don't we actually, Michael, do you want to talk about some of the stuff you've been working on this week?
I should have stayed muted. Uh,
Well, you're here now,
sorry.
Mitch.
So, what I've been working on, well, honestly, well, let's see. CP wise, the biggest thing right now is kind of finalization of the operator. So, kind of finishing up. Like, I still have the two female operators to do. Um, and then with that, fixing the crouching. For just to give you guys an idea, if you see anyone on their knees begging, it is animation related. Just clip it, make a bug report for them, it's literally them begging to be fixed. It's not, it's not like a secret. I guess it's like an Easter egg in a kind of way, but we put that in there to better determine what's broken, and it ties it specifically to animation. So if something's missing, it them doing that animation automatically tells us it's animation related. It's in the anim blueprint. It helps narrow down and fix things instead of them just T-posing, or it could be something not linked correctly. This just tells us directly it's animation blueprint. That's it. Besides that, just kind of the finishing polish on what's remaining for the operator to add that customization for you guys to go in and kind of fine tune. And then that kind of goes into 1.3, towards the end of 1.3, where we start like making the operator more unique towards your play style and whatnot. But for the most part, just kind of doing the finishing touches, fixing up the animations, adding some of the weapons that need to go to the operator to begin with that have been kind of withheld. For instance, the Vector, the G36. The other one was I'm drawing the blank from when we first transitioned from first person to third person. The Scorpion Evo, yeah, the Evo. So those are on the pipeline too to be fleshed out. So by the end of 1.3, you'll have your operator that will be honestly, that's when we aim to have it just done. Like, polish wise, just done. Feature wise, I'm not going to say it's going to be done feature wise because who's to say 1.5 we have a ingenious idea to do something different or change a certain thing. So it will be polished from an animation standpoint by the end of 1.3.
To expand on
But that's
that,
just what we're working towards.
yeah, to expand on that, what he's saying in terms of basically it might not be completely done, is I'll give you an example. Internally, which I think I've dropped some teasers on the public Discord, is I think that's the only place I dropped them, is working on repelling and we're working on climbing for the infected. So an example of like something that would come in the future is like I've prototyped it, but we've had some bugs and some issues, so we have more time to focus on it collaboratively as a team. Then we're going to bring that to the forefront of infected can now climb buildings, which means that the people will be able to shoot a rappel rope and go up the side of a building or go down a building. And those are things that I've prototyped. I've gotten working in smaller maps. When we scale it up to the larger maps, we run into technical issues because of the memory consumption requirement of what it puts on the navigation mesh. So it's something that like we need to debug, we need to focus, we need to basically improve upon when things calm down and all the major line items are done on the roadmap. Maybe it happens in 1.3, probably not. It'll probably be something that we save in 1.4, 1.5 for icing on the cake, in terms of like pushing the game to like its full potential of like verticality. Giving the infected another way of inspiring fear in your units, because now at that point there is truly no safe spot for your units, because now they can get to you everywhere, and then I guess I'll mention this now since we're on it. So I don't mention it that often, but we just put into production 3 concepts for 3 new infected types. A sperm whale that'll be a transport unit for assaulting the carrier and getting from island to island, alongside different from the birds and from the Leviathan. And then we are working on Chelsea's elite guard, which will be an elite type of unit, um, that'll essentially hunt your units at night. Like Chelsea will assign bounties, or basically like she'll try and single out your units and try and hunt them and kill them with these units. And then they'll obviously be her elite guard in terms of like you attack her, they're always going to be on her like glue. Them and spitters. So they'll be like the first line in terms of like in mid to late game, she'll growth them, build them, whatever, and then at that point they're going to be a consistent threat for the rest of the game, and they're going to destroy. If I were to pull a reference what we're thinking for them, think Salazar's guards from Resident Evil 4. In terms of basically like kind of how we're kind of basing their design, their inspiration from, looking at some of their abilities and their versatility, and just kind of like getting inspiration from those units. And then the third unit that we're working on with concept artists is a chimera type dog that will basically be like their answer towards your heavy armor. So they'll be fast. They'll have a projectile based like attack, and they'll actually be able to like cut your stuff up, like they'll have claws and all that. They'll be like basically a very large sized dog. If I were to pull reference or inspiration, White Spikes from Tomorrow Wars. So those are kind of like the inspirations and the ideas we're kind of pulling from to kind of start the discussion with our concept artists. And then over time, they'll become more on their own, and we'll start to show some of their concepts and the announcements. Um, because basically those chimera dogs are going to be like your Abrams hunters, they're going to be your striker hunters, they're going to be your Bradley hunters, because we're going to be programming them so that they can jump on buildings, they can run along the side of the buildings. They're fast, they're going to travel in packs. So the idea is that they're going to run in, overwhelm your units if you're not paying attention, you don't have proper support. You're sending out an Abrams with two strikers and expecting it to destroy the universe. No, you have to have support. You got to have assaults. You got to have heavies. You got to have medics. Maybe even some helicopters to give early recon, so you can maneuver your units and position them correctly if other units are coming to counterattack you. That's the direction we're going into 1.3 and beyond, where it's like more strategy, more intentionality in terms of the formations matter, your placements matter, and that they're not going to just throw units at you anymore. It's going to be more so like they might throw some to test your defenses, but at that point, they're going to learn, they're going to reevaluate, and they're going to figure out what is the best way to kill you. And then obviously part of that will be utilizing these new enemy types, because with the sperm whale, its back will crack open, and units will just jump out. And the idea is that's how they're going to hunt down your carrier. Because the carrier in 1.3 is going to become your most important unit. You'll be able to build on it, you'll be able to upgrade on it, you'll be able to put vehicles in its body, like you'll be able to actually drive them into the vehicle bay, put infantry in there, use the elevators on the aircraft carrier to move units from the top deck to the bottom deck, and then be able to use that to disembark by lowering the back door or using the side doors. And that will become your winters, where winters will no longer be a lose condition, and your aircraft carrier dying will be. So now that's your king, in terms of basically, and winters will just become a rebuildable hero. Now, one thing that we've been talking about internally is also making it to where the operator is more integral to the whole experience in third person, not third person, sorry, in the RTS aspect. So we've also considered having it to where when you first start the game, you make an operator, and then that operator is the person on the helicopter instead of Winters. And Winters is a hero that you buy in mid to late game with more abilities added to her in 1.3 to give her more of like, okay, I gotta call Winter, she's really good at buffing units, she inspires them, she increases their XP, like giving her more of a leadership boost role, and then having your operator take more of the forefront of like, because Pandemic isn't canon. And the biggest thing to remember is like things that happen in Pandemic mode will never happen in the story mode, like there's no cure. There just isn't. We did that as a compromise to the community to give them more meaningful ways of interacting with the virus and like having their own story unfold when we introduce the DNA research stream more in the future and everything else. There'll be some parallels to the campaign, but not that many. So that's the biggest thing to consider, is that those are things we're looking at based off of like what people want and just the feedback we've heard about how frustrating it is when Winters dies. She doesn't add anything to the game. I think there was even a meme at one time where she's just an upgraded assault. Like we had people naming themselves on Discord, Winters is just an upgraded assault, which she is. Like she doesn't really kind of have anything really going for her. That kind of makes her stand above the pack. So that's the logical direction we're thinking is boom, you make it, we put the operator in sometime in the middle of 1.3. Next time you log in, make an operator. Customize them. Choose your name. Choose your abilities. Choose your weapons. Great. Go to Pandemic mode. New game, that person's on the helicopter instead of Winters. And then we'd flip them out in save games. So if you had a pre-existing save game, the operator would spawn instead of the we'll replace the winners basically, and then winners will just be a buildable hero, because we want to give winners more utility. She's kind of useless, and we don't want her to have just stay at base, stay on the aircraft carrier. It's pointless. Like, why even? Like, like it's just like we need to kind of give her a purpose in gameplay. So we're aware of that. That's something we're going to address in 1.3, and it's going to be somewhere in the middle, because the operator is going to be a collaboration, and we're going to try and get everything done. The third person, we're going to get everything done that was on the list that we have. We're going to get the third person. We're going to get the RTS aspects. We're going to have it so you can call in 4 operators as your they lead your teams. You break them up into squads. That's your sniper operator. That's your medic hybrid operator. That's your assault CQB operator that can melee people. Like that kind of stuff. So that's the direction we're going to be going in, to give you guys more meaningful choices to how to play the game. And obviously we'll be taking feedback along the way. So if you guys have a better suggestion or an idea, you can mention it a monthly AMA. You can put it in the Discord. Put it on Reddit. Put it on Steam. We read it. I have to apologize. I'm behind on Steam. I have become so inundated in work, and I'm the only person that reads the Steam threads on the entire team. I need to catch up. So if you're watching this and you have a Steam thread on a crash or another issue, I'm coming for you. It's just I need a couple days at most to catch up on the Steam backlog. So if it's really dire, come find me on Discord. Just message me directly on Discord, tag me in Discord. Here's my Steam thread. Can you please help me? Having crashing issues, whatever. I don't care. I'm super chill. No problem with people coming and approaching me, as long as you're gonna do it civilly. So yeah, that's everything I got. And then Michael, is there anything else you want to add before we move on to the last point?
Nope.
Okay, Derivar, it's all you. And this is the Michael one anyway. Maybe he's dead.
Hold on.
Okay.
I was answering a text message. Minigunner weapon being moved to heavy.
Dude, Michael.
That wasn't really a me question. It was just kind of me and Dark were talking about it, and we were kind of cutting some of the useless units, and we kind of felt like the minigunner was useless,
and ugly.
We decided just to give
incredibly ugly.
The heavy.
It was
going to be tied to the doctrine unlock. That was it.
Yeah. Yep. So that was the biggest thing, is that because the biggest thing is we trying to leave early access. We need to refine the game. We need to focus in on more of the core. We need to basically get rid of the bloat that's going to cost us to expenditure a lot of money that can be used in more maps, more bounty, improving the bounty system, having more horde maps. Because character modeling is incredibly expensive. And so is animation, and so is the concept. So we were like, does the minigunner really give us that much value to the game? Why don't we just give it to the heavy, copy over his animation set, and he works just fine in the role that we need him to do. And it's like the assault grenade launcher, or the javelin, where you get it from the doctrine tree, and now it's available next time you bring your heavy to the barracks. And then, yeah, that was the thought process behind it. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else. Let me see. Did we miss anything, guys? We went over this week. I think that's pretty much everything in a nutshell.
I think we've covered just about everything.
Okay, let me check one thing. I think there was one thing we're neglecting. Oh, Efren. So, sorry. One last thing to add is what Efren and Dimitri have been doing, and our writer, Chris. So, Efren's been working with the community on Discord, on Steam, and on Reddit to identify problematic collision areas where basically units constantly get stuck, evacuations get stuck, bridges aren't functioning properly. Identifying faults in our pipeline, our build machine, where basically we can improve based off of bugs that keep reoccurringly happening, and we're just tired of it. We're like, okay, how do we get rid of this permanently? What are we doing wrong? How can we do better? Or instead of it just random bugs just happen every once in a while. So he's been doing that research, hunting them down, and working with people. And in some cases, people are making, they'll make a forums thread, they'll message in general, and they're like, hey, why can't they clear these items? These items aren't clearing properly, or whatever. Take a picture, either I tag them or they tag them directly, boom, next patch it's removable. It's one of those things where it's like if people want certain extra areas removable, or maybe we missed something initially in the first pass. We've tried to catch as many as possible. I think the previous, like 2 weeks ago, I mentioned we made 1,200 items clearable, minimum, I think it was around. But we're still doing it. I made some myself clearable in the Western Treasure Island Stadium area, those trees. Those palm trees, I made those clearable, and a couple other ones based off of just seeing what people like to build and screenshots on the Discord. And I was like, that'd be a lot better if they had more flexibility. Oops. One thing we're going to be looking at is removing the streetlights to make those clearable. We're on the fence about those because long term we were still playing with the idea of making it to where potentially we could have those turn on and have it to where players can control the power in certain sections to increase the happiness of a zone. Um, but because of how the engine handles dynamic light and how expensive that would be to nuking people's video cards with all the overlapping lights, i.e. why we don't allow the spotlights to overlap, and when you turn on flashlights, your frame rate has a stroke, is we've kind of given up on that for the time being until we can find a cheap way of doing it, or the geniuses behind the engine, like they made Lumen, they made Nanite, are able to find a way of making it cheaper, like it is in the Cry engine or Lumberyard, where they've found some magical way of making dynamic lights just work, no matter how many are on top of each other. It's magic. We don't know how it works, but it works in that engine. It's the only game engine that does it. So then beyond that, that's what Efren's been working on. Dimitri's been working on the aircraft carrier, the Assault, getting it rigged, animated, textured, and ready. So that way, in about a month, when we transition over to the aircraft carrier, because that's the first thing we're doing. And then after that, he's switching over to the Abrams and the Bradley and the VTOL and and then making the weapon packages for the Little Bird, the Black Hawk. And I'm forgetting something right now, but there's another one. The VTOL weapon packages as well. Basically, another one. Because we're going to be adding miniguns, rockets, and they'll be separate packages. So when you get the Little Bird, you get the miniguns. You get the rockets, you get the rocket version with the Little Bird. The Black Hawk will get the minigun as well, and the missiles. And then the Abrams has a couple of different gun configurations you can change out. I don't remember them right now. It's posted in the Discord, and someone searches for it, you can find it via a document I posted previously. But generally, every vehicle is going to have 2 or 3 weapons from what we're going to be adding, the new ones, the Bradley and such, the VTOL. And the last thing is Chris has been working on the novel. He's been working on basically kind of building up the game design doc, building up the lore. I'm really big on lore, really big on the world building. As with the testament of like the audiobook, the novelization, the anthology, whereas like I like to build up the back of the characters, figure out who they are with Chris in collaboration, and then figure out like what are all the events that are going to tie into the campaign, and like so the people that have read the books, they're going to have a leg up in some capacities of like understanding or even seeing scenes recreated from the campaign from the books in the campaign. Because there's going to be some scenes that just rip right out of the books, and then they're just like, rearranged to kind of make it to where you're playing it, you're experiencing it. So, just letting you guys know, the Pierce book came out on Amazon on Steam this week. It's a really, really good insight into basically just Cirque and how they handle the situation. It'll kind of temper the people on the community that are wondering, like, what is the official stance of Cirque towards other groups, other people, And I'm going to be honest, they're basically just kind of like, stay out of the way. We're the experts here. We'll call you. And that's ultimately like Cirque's stance that they take towards like containing the virus, understanding what's going on, and they're afraid. They're terrified of the virus. There's no cure. They have no way of detecting it in the book, and it's one of those things where it's like no one leaves. If they leave, kill them. If a random civilian gets on a boat and starts driving away from the island, blow it up. If the National Guard, like in the first book, if the National Guard has an infection event on the ship and when they're gonna disregard all orders and try and make port in Oakland, blow up the whole ship. Cause that's that ship. I don't know if people have caught on to this, but we put the book elements in the level design. So that ship that's sunk off the coast of the original starting military base on the middle center, that's the ship from the book that gets sunk because the circus is terrified about like there's a virus contagion. Like people that are infected are on that ship. It's in the early onset, and Wu makes the call, kill them all. Like just scuttle it. We don't know who's infected, and by the time we figure out and respond to wherever they're going to beach along the Oakland pier, then we're going to have a whole other situation on our hands. Or if they go to San Francisco, so we're kind of like putting small little clues into the level design from the books, from like, and then you'll see again in the campaign. But yeah, that's the general gist. So if people are really interested in the lore and the world building, check out the book. There's going to be two more that we're going to release over the next couple of months. There's going to be one on Natalie and the Anarchist that's going to coincide with all the other stories and events, and the last one's going to cover Fenrir. That's going to explain um, essentially who they are and who is the third. Well, technically she's the second lieutenant, the undercover Fenrir operative that no one knows who she is, and she just kind of runs around like that little get up or whatever. She's from Fenrir, so that book will cover her. So every book also covers a lieutenant or the leaders of the infected. The first book covered Chelsea. This book covers Mason, the SWAT operative, the guy with the gun with the LMG that runs around and mows you down as a lieutenant. The second book, well, actually, the first book also covered the second guy, which is the Noah Wells, the doctor. The second one, Natalie, is not going to cover any lieutenants. The third one will cover the Federal operative, and it'll kind of be like our last book that we push out, ideally, right before we start to do the campaign. So at that point, everyone has a bunch of clues and a bunch of ideas of the direction we're going to go into the campaign. And then it's like, okay, like we're building anticipation up. So it's going to be a very fun year going into 2024 just to kind of get ready for all that, which is why I'm just like, we got to haul ass on 1.3. It's going to be just boom, boom, boom to get the co-op as soon as possible so we can get that out, get an experimental out, and then, from there immediately transition over to like 1.4, get those last polish elements in for pandemic mode, the factions, Pierce and Natalie, and then at that point do the campaign alongside small little pandemic changes here and there, and then go from there and see what the community wants after we release and leave early access. Um, yeah, that was a mouthful. So just kind of that way, cause I know some people don't always come to every single one, so I try and kind of set the expectation of like what we're doing, what's going on this year, going into next year. I know I repeat myself a lot, but I'm really excited to see when we finally get to the end of 1.3 and we're able to deliver on what everyone wants. And then also deliver it again, all again for Pierce and Natalie, tear them completely out. Because God, I don't. The implementation of factions is a lot of work. And I'm gonna be honest for people that are listening on YouTube and on Discord. Personally, I would not recommend playing with factions. It's in there, but it's not maintained. It's not updated, and it's kind of an afterthought at this point until we can get to them and focus on them and make them shine. Actually, make them like fun. I'm sure there's some fun to have, but I would recommend, in my opinion, of using the dynamic civilian groups, turning them all the way up, and using them as the factions until we get to the point after co-op we can focus on them in their entirety. So that will wrap up my part of the dev thing. Derivar, you can wrap it up now.
Something I did want to add though is moving the minigun weapon to the heavy is probably a bad idea.
Thank you for
I run heavies like you wouldn't believe. I create small militaries out of heavies.
I know
I'm
you
going
do.
to enjoy watching my frame rate.
I don't
just
think
fucking
it's gonna be
plummet.
that bad. Like from an honest standpoint, not a lot of people use the minigunner to begin with. It's very far and few in between. Like it's very rare that I see somebody use minigunner, and it's really just because the dude is so slow. And that was the caveat with it, is that it was such a bulky design and everything, is that it was just kind of a unit you had put there. He could hold a lane, but he was expensive to maintain because when we started implementing uh, the special weapons, quote unquote, like for instance, Winters has a broken M4 called the Neverwinter. The only caveat to that is it's a very it eats a lot of ammo. Like the cost of one bullet is the cost of three, or something like that. It was very expensive to upkeep and use, but it was very devastating. And the minigun kind of picked up on that in terms of like its ammo consumption, and then the amount that it takes from the resupply box was also pretty big.
That's the other thing to consider. Yeah, he's right because you figure we were planning on counter once we get it in there, once we play test it. Our plan was is again limit it by resupply. I mean, how expensive the gun is. I mean, it's gonna be like 2 to 3 times the normal cost of a gun because literally it is a weed whacker. It just tears down everyone in front of you. We might, depending on, we might incur a movement penalty of moving them slower, but we try and avoid that because then it makes it really annoying when you have large groups and everyone has to wait for the one guy with the big gun in the back. So we're gonna kind of leave that on the back burner. Um, but I think just having the cost, having the ammo resupply cost, and having it just decimate ammo boxes, and that when people bring a memo, it takes multiple runs for an ammo runner to bring a memo, then that will mitigate your death crawls. Does that
And
make
also,
sense?
I think the target acquisition where it was really high on that, and the spread was pretty high compared to normal weaponry. So it was kind of, it was better for like maintaining when we had the hordes. Like when we had the horde system in pandemic mode, that's where the minigunners shine the most. But
Oh yes.
once we actually go in and redo the infected's AI and how they maneuver and look around the map, the minigunner is going to be more of like, I would say, a base holder and more of like a heavy hitter if you were going to like bring him into an assault zone with like a chopper, like the strafing runs that people used to do with the minigunner when he was too accurate.
Oh god.
Yeah, that was a thing too. But I think it would definitely be more useful to kind of drop it in when you're like, let's say, pushing either pod or a lieutenant area, or just if you're wanting to take out one of the dynamic civilian groups, dropping in a group of minigunners, just decimate their whole camp.
Well, let me ask you a question, Michael. Do you want to go the route of making him move slower intentionally?
Yes and no. Um, the code for how they accelerate when they're in formation would kind of negate that anyways. It would just be them moving by themselves. But honestly, as it stands, the infected are fast enough. They will outrun you no matter what. On foot,
Oh,
the infected will get you. There's no
okay.
running away from them. You either have a secondary plan to get your guys out, but if you're planning on just retreating while they're chasing you, they will catch you.
Yeah, I remember that one.
The sprint speed for the infected is it's faster than the sprint speed for anyone else.
Of course. What do you think, Jeremiah? Think that solves
I
it?
think it's going. I think it's going to be interesting. That's all I'm really gonna say. Is that it's going to be interesting. And
Anything else you
like,
want to throw out? Our body is ready.
your body is ready. Nothing I can really think of.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we can wrap it up. What do you say?
Yeah, go ahead and give it the our outro.
Sweet. All right. Thank you everyone for coming along, and thank you to Michael and Robert for being here. If you'd like to continue to support the development of Cepheus Protocol, we do have a Patreon and a merch store. Yeah, you can head over to them and help us out and everything like that.
Also, thank you everyone for not calling it swag store. That's all.
Thank you.
Yeah, that shit's a bit weird, that one.
We don't talk
Yeah.
about that.
Thank you everyone.
It's like Fight Club.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah.